Hi there. This is Margaret Meps and Frank Lloyd Bear back to share some more teddy bear wisdom with you from The Joyful Bear. Chapter 24, Travel. Frankie has traveled more than most bears. He has sailed on small boats in the Atlantic and the Pacific and the Gulf of Mexico. He knows all the good anchorages in Puget Sound. He's also driven to all four corners of North America, including British Columbia, San Diego, Key West, and Newfoundland. He tells me he's at home wherever he is. Well, except maybe stuffed into a suitcase, he admits. I know he'd rather do the flying himself, but once in a while he has to endure the indignity of riding inside my bag. Once he gets out of the bag and samples the new air, though, he's thoroughly at home, wherever we have landed. His complacency is completely at odds with my cat, who nearly went insane in a strange motel room. She didn't want space. She wanted security. She was always happier sleeping in the van, a familiar but tiny space. "What do you prefer, Margaret?" asks Frankie. "I love adventures," I admit. "But if I have to sleep in a strange place—" "You want your bear," he finishes my sentence triumphantly. He is confident of his place in this world, no matter where in the world that is. Right now we're staying at a friend's house in Bellingham, Washington, and he's curled up on the couch with a new friend, Pola, as in Polar Bear. She looks like a miniature version of him. The same face, the same posture, but about half his size. Her tag declares her to be a Gund Snuffles, so they are distantly related. Pola rarely travels, which explains why she looks younger but is a full 8 years older than Frankie. "Traveling gives me a new character," says Frankie. It's a graceful way to explain his shabbiness and my crow's feet. Last week he was with me in California at another friend's house, where he spent his time looking out the window at deer and wild turkeys. Before that, we were staying in the cozy basement guest room of some relatives in Ohio. Everywhere I go, he goes. "What's your favorite place, Frankie?" I ask him. His round black eyes look surprised at the question. "Right here, Margaret." I should have known the answer. I am of two minds about traveling. One is based on Mark Twain's famous statement, "Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness, and many of our people need it sorely on these accounts." The other, however, is based on the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson, who wrote, "At home I dream that at Naples I can be intoxicated with beauty and lose my sadness. I pack my trunk, embrace my friends, embark on the sea, and at last wake up in Naples, and there beside me is the stern fact, the sad self, unrelenting, identical, that I fled from." In other words, wherever you go, there you are. The problem with travel is that those who do it usually consider themselves superior to those who do not, and those who do not generally feel deprived and envious, despite the fact that their lives can be just as exciting, fascinating, and fulfilling as those who do. The happy medium is to recognize that either life, mobile or stationary, is completely valid, and neither one is better than the other. Our minds travel when our bodies are forced to stay at home. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Chapter 25, Photos. Yesterday it was a beautiful day, and I went for a walk along the waterfront with a new friend. Afterwards we sat in a top-floor cafe in an old brick building. The sun poured in the windows, and she glowed inside and out. I pulled out my phone to take a picture, and she panicked. "Oh no, I hate having my picture taken. I always look terrible." Although the sun was still shining, she turned off her internal glow. I tried taking the photo anyway, but when I showed it to her, she made me delete it. This is in contrast to Frankie's reaction to photos. He's the ultimate furry ham. Me, be me. I want to be in the picture. Every time I take out the camera, he is eager to be included. It is not narcissism, it's something more subtle. We sit down to talk about it. I am who I am, he says. What's that got to do with cameras, I ask. Everything and nothing, he says maddeningly. I wait in silence for him to explain. The only sound is the hum of the refrigerator. He hums along as he collects his thoughts. When you say, let's take a picture, you see something good, or at least interesting, in the present moment, he begins. And you are good and interesting, I ask, hopefully? No, that's not it at all. I just am. He tries another approach. The camera's only a tool. It captures what is. You're saying the lens does not judge? Right. The camera loves me unconditionally. It loves you unconditionally, too. When we live in the present moment, we're always good enough to be in the photo. There. Look, there's Frankie posing. I used to dread mirrors. Looking at my flaws and imperfections left me feeling depressed and hopeless. Then I did some personal growth work that required me to look into a mirror and really see myself. At first it was awful. I hated picking up that mirror. Eventually, I got used to it. Now when I look into a mirror, I recognize that I am what I am, as Popeye says. I have learned to be honest about what I see and to practice self-compassion. Compassion isn't some kind of self-improvement project or ideal we're trying to live up to. Having compassion starts and ends with having compassion for all those unwanted parts of ourselves, all those imperfections that we don't even want to look at, writes Pema Chodron, a Buddhist nun and author. Some of those imperfections are external, and some of them are internal. Dr. Kristen Neff distinguishes between self-compassion and self-pity or self-indulgence. Instead of mercilessly judging and criticizing yourself for various inadequacies or shortcomings, self-compassion means you are kind and understanding when confronted with personal failings. Frankie isn't bothered by the fact that his nose is worn or his fur is not as white and fluffy as it used to be. He not only has compassion for all beings, he has it for himself as well. To love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance. Oscar Wilde.